Researchers of East European synagogues, the synagogue painters, suggest that limited corpus of motif evidence in this genre testifies to the transference of professional knowledge of visual templates from father to son, from master to apprentice. In spite of the lack of visual and written documentary evidence, we may outline some methods of transference through comparative analysis of the same motif appearing in different synagogues. Right. My paper focuses on elephant paintings on walls and ceilings of several Eastern and Central European synagogues. Elephants depicted carrying different structures on their backs were recorded in the synagogues of Vodich, Yabonov, and Chodorov, painted in the first half of the 18th century in Eastern Galicia, Poland. In the synagogues of Berg and Unterlimpu, painted in the first half of the 18th century in Franconia and Württemberg in Germany, and in the synagogues of Michalpol, Yarishev, and Milkovce, painted in the second half of the 18th century in Eastern Galicia. The synagogue elephant motif consisted on two components, the elephant itself and the structure on its back. Isolating the two components and comparing synagogue depictions reveal different methods of using visual models for each of the two components. The elephant image resembles each other in some details, but differ from each other in other aspects. I propose that each synagogue painter employed several various models in order to design each single elephant motif, and that synagogue painters consulted other synagogue paintings as visual models. Rather than carefully copying miniatures in the workshop as part of the apprenticeship training, the practice of using synagogue paintings as visual models sometimes made invention a necessity. In the process of painting the structures on the elephant backs, it is most probable that other practices were employed, mainly drawing actual buildings and adjusting them practically or symbolically to fit their function. The method of collaging could be a result of either practical or semantic factors, the lack of appropriate visual models, and adaptation of symbolic meanings. In painting the elephants, like in painting other wild animals, synagogue painters were highly dependent on visual models, hence on previous traditions. The elephants depicted in the Chodorov synagogue in Eastern Galicia was shaped quite realistically. This might indicate that it was using model that was based on copies of drawing or sculptures that were made according to living Asian elephants. Other elephants painted for the first half of the 18th century were less realistic, but some of them did resemble each other. The elephant depicted in the Yabonov synagogue shared some details with the elephant in the Vodich synagogue in the same geographic area. Among these details, an ear that was shaped like two teardrops, one inside the other, a human-like eye viewed from the front, a long bent tusk, smooth trunk which rolled tightly towards its edge, straight legs without knees, perhaps according to folk stories about elephant hunting, and a short, thick tail. The elephants that were painted on the ceiling of the Berg and Unterlimpu synagogue also shared certain elements with the Galician elephants, including the lean belly shape, a double teardrop-shaped ear, and a human eye depicted from the front. Similar eyes were also documented in the three elephant paintings in the synagogues of Yarishev, Milkovce, and Michalpol. In two of them, long tusks were also documented. The elephant that was painted in the Minkovce synagogue had also double teardrop-shaped ear. All of these shared details were imaginary. This indicates that the painters shared similar visual models or used painting in other synagogues as visual models. However, striking differences between elephant paintings that did share certain key aspects testify that synagogue painters probably did not intend to precisely copy the visual models, or employed several various models in order to design each single elephant motif. Several examples support this hypothesis. One of them is the different shaped trunks and legs in the German elephant paintings as compared to the Wojcik and the Obuonev elephant paintings. The trunks in the Berg and Unterlimpel paintings were designed as straight chains of links. The feet were depicted in walking or running position, with hoofs not closed as in the Wojcik synagogue, and with prominent knees. However, in this case, we don't know for sure if these synagogue paintings were copied from each other or from similar visual models. There's a possibility that the models themselves shared some key aspects but varied in others. A more distinct example is the shape of the ear in the later Galician elephant paintings. The general appeal of these three paintings indicated they were made by one artist or by painters that were familiar with each other's works. Nevertheless, only two of the elephant's ears in Michalpol and Yerishev were stylized in the same manner, as an amorphous shape. The ear of the Minkovce synagogue was the only one that was shaped as a double teardrop. In these three paintings, differences were also documented in the shapes of the tails and hoofs. These examples prove that synagogue painters in Michalpol, Yerishev, and Minkovce didn't stick to one visual model. This diversity of details could reflect the use of several models for the painting of the motif, or another aspect of the synagogue painter's work, invention. Sometimes invention was necessary, it was a necessity, as a result of the painter's practice of using other synagogue paintings as visual models. For example, an example for such inevitable invention is the elephant tusks painted in the Berg and Unterlimpel synagogues. Most of the tusks painted in 18th-century synagogues were separated from the elephant's skin and mouth by contour and a white coloring. In contrast, the tusk of the elephant in the Berg synagogue was not separated from the lower lip and was not painted white. Although the painter, Eliezer Zussman, used a darker shade of brown next to a thin white stripe inside the tusk, he probably didn't know what this organ was, as he painted the ear in the same way. This wrong depiction might have resulted from one of several probable reasons. Either he used a visual model with no separation between the elephant's skin and tusk, or the model was damaged or partly erased. Another possibility is that he copied the motif from a synagogue painting which was high and dark, so he couldn't notice the details. The painter of the Unterlimpel synagogue clearly used the Berg elephant as a visual model. But the different proportions and taste of the two beasts indicate that he didn't use precise copying methods such as pouncing or tracing. This is in spite of the fact that the two painters probably worked together and could share drawings or other visual models with each other, as did medieval Christian painters and their apprentices. When painting the tusk, the Unterlimpel synagogue painter had a problem because he didn't understand the visual model he copied from the Berg synagogue. In order to solve this problem, he used invention, interpreting the tusk as a diagonal part of the elephant's mouth. Comparison of the structures painted on the elephant's backs can indicate different methods occupied by the painters concerning the use of visual models, including the possibility that they drew or copied actual buildings. With some exceptions, most documented structures painted on elephants' backs in Christian and Jewish sources were designed as walled fortresses. In contrast, all the structures on elephants' backs in documented synagogues were shaped as civilian houses. In the Yablunov synagogue, the building had 3 onion-shaped vaults. The building resembled one of the types of visual representations of the Jerusalem temple in the 18th century. Perhaps that was the painter's intention. Therefore, he could use paintings or prints of the temple as a visual model. On the other hand, this 3-vaulted building also resembled Orthodox wooden churches that were common to the countryside of eastern Galicia in the 18th century. Hence, there is a possibility that the visual model for this temple-like building was an actual wooden church. Inspecting the structure on the elephant's back in the Dvojic synagogue reinforces this hypothesis. On the one hand, it can be considered a 2-vaulted structure, which was also typical of wooden and masonry churches. But it is also probable that the painter drew a 3-vaulted building from its narrow side, hiding the 3rd vault behind the central tower, as you can see in these examples that were photographed already. The structures painted in the Chodorov synagogue were shaped differently. They had 3 rectangular roofs and 2 more smaller and lower side roofs. These shapes were also typical to wooden buildings in eastern Galicia, such as rural manor houses and wooden synagogues, which could serve as visual models for these paintings. In spite of the difference found between these 3 constructions, a common element does appear in all of them. A large gate which was lower than the rest of the building. This element was probably fictitious and was designed to make the combination of the elephant and the construction more organic. The combination of these 3 different constructions with similar gate form suggests that the painter combined several models, imaginary and realistic, into the building motif. This detail also makes it clear that the painters made changes to the building that they copied in order to adjust them to their function in the whole painted motif. The painter Eliezer Hussmann came to Germany from Brody, so he probably was familiar with 2 or 3 vaulted churches. Nevertheless, the building on the back of the elephant in the Hope Synagogue looks like a 3-story resident house with steep roof. This construction was typical to German towns and villages in the early modern period. Hence, it can be also considered as a copy of actual building, and thus it supports the assumption that the synagogue painters copied buildings from their immediate environment. Several details suggest that, like in Galicia, the model was a public house. First of all, a small vault on top of the roof was more typical to this kind of building than to residence houses. And secondly, either the building was a representation of a hexagonal or octagonal building, or it was painted in a wrong perspective. These details were typical to public houses in some contemporary paintings on furniture. You can see or not. You can see. Okay, as you can see in this. The building painted in the Olympus Synagogue differs from the building in the Hope Synagogue in contrast to the striking similarity between the elephants, although some of the details shared between the two buildings, like two stories marked by rows of windows. The Olympus building also resembled features from the Galician Synagogue, among them a big vault and two side towers. The small, almost theatrical structures on the backs of the elephant in the three later Galician synagogues, and I'm sorry for the lost toothpick in the Michal fault, were nearly identical. Although they seemed like imaginary buildings, they might have been copied from actual buildings. The basis of this assumption is the documentation of urban scenes in Michal, Nicosia, and Yarishv synagogues, made of houses in varied sizes and shapes, but all very similar to the small building on the elephant's backs. Therefore, it is possible that the painter drew a few buildings and then, in the process of repetition and invention, created both the elaborate urban scenes and the small pavilions on the elephant's backs. Using actual building as visual models made sense if we consider the process of copying from visual models a practical one. Unlike the case of rare wild animals, it is very likely that it was easier for the painters to walk outside their workshops and choose a building to copy than to search for one in illustrated manuscripts or books. Although this is not an iconographic study, it can be noted that the transference of buildings on backs of elephants might serve iconographic purposes. For example, it may represent the yearning for the days of the Messiah and the return to land of Israel, not only of human beings, but also of buildings. According to Rabbi Elazar Kapar saying, the synagogues and study halls in Babylonia will in time to come be planted in Eretz Israel. But this is a subject for a different study. To conclude, sometimes in order to see the elephant, we must observe it very carefully. The painted elephants teach us about the use of diverse visual models in the work of 18th century synagogue painters. The elephants bearing structures on the backs were only one of many complicated motifs in these synagogues. Hence, carefully examining additional painted motifs rather than just classifying or generalizing them promises to reveal much more about the working methods of the synagogue painters. Thank you.
For this great lecture, questions, remarks?
No, what kind of quotations about the elephant gorgeous? I know what kind of quotation this is. It's a quotation about coming back and coming out the Ark of the Covenant. Maybe it is.
Yes, I know this
this
theory.
In the right.
Okay, so the theory of the direction of the elephants going towards the ark and okay, I think it might be right for this synagogue.
Only this.
I don't know if only for this synagogue, but I know that in the Yarishv synagogue, the elephants were depicted only. We know of only one depiction, which was not on the east wall. So I don't know if it's right for all the synagogue.
Shalom.
Thank you for the interesting lecture. I still have the question, why the elephant? I mean, Why the elephant was selected, let's say it's the temple. Why this animal and not another? Why not the lion, which is more logical, for example?
A lion?
A lion
To carry the synagogue?
to
carry
carry
the
the
building?
Messianic temple. It's like the lion is the symbol of the Messiah, so it's more, why the elephant? So and also the shape of the building, I mean, you have actual baldachins on the elephants to carry a nobility and not a building of importance as far as I know. I mean, I don't think maybe it's a kind of comparison between actual elephants and baldachins and just the idea of why it's on an elephant.
Okay. Elephants were known both in Quran and both in the Talmud as very big animals. And there are examples like somewhere it said someone wanted to take his daughter to her. She was married, and he wanted to take her on top of an elephant. But they said, no, an elephant is strong. He fits this. But he's not a nice animal, so he doesn't fit a marriage maybe. But elephants were, on the one hand, very strong. On the second hand, they were a wonder. No one saw an elephant. As you can see, no one really knew what's an elephant. So it was like a dragon, it was like a unicorn, it was like a lion, but it was very big and strong. In order to carry buildings, you have to use a very strong animal. So this is why I think they used elephants. And what was the question about the buildings?
I mean, compared to actual elephants with baldachins.
Okay. There were Jews were familiar with this baldachin. There were depictions of elephants with fortresses, also in Hebrew printed books. But I didn't find them in the synagogue. At first, I really thought that the Vojic,
Like in the circus, for example, in Eastern Europe, I don't know.
yeah, but I don't think it fits the 18th century thinking, because really no one used an elephant. There were 13 elephants in the 16th century in Europe, but they were in zoos, private zoos, so no one really saw them except for really famous or the painters of the king, the painters of the pope, like this.
Sergei?
Okay, I should tell that this comparison to the churches with three cupolas on one line, on the central axis, it's a jungle. The discourse of where does it come to the Ukrainian architecture is a very, very serious discussion, because it belongs to one group of wooden churches of the Berg region in northern Carpathia, but it is really a part of Ukrainian realm. But when it comes to the masonry building in Lvov, it becomes a very sophisticated and difficult question, because the first church to bear such cupolas is the Assumption Church, built by Paolo Dominici, an Italian architect, for an Orthodox commission sponsor. So, what is this image? One researchers say it is taken from these Boyka churches. Others say that it is an image of San Marco, and it is some generalized image of Orient, probably, in Italian mind, in a mind of Italian architect. And this theory has its support, because when Giacomo Briano, the Italian Jesuit architect, was designing the Jesuit church in one of his options, he put three cupolas on the facade, but that option was rejected. And he was flattering to the Oriental public. and also the woodcut from Birkat Amazon, it comes probably from Dürrenfeld to Prague, and not vice versa, because it is a Dutch iconography with this round garden in front of this palace or whatever. So I'm afraid it's a very, very serious problem which should be treated very, very carefully.
In Islamic art, there is hundreds and hundreds of imagery of I forget the name of the carriage, architectural structure on top of an elephant, and particularly in Hindu art. I mean, it's all over the place. I think there's a good component of this research is you got to go to that research. Certainly, the idea that Jews are borrowing from an Islamic art which is heavily invested in elephant architecture or whatever the term is, I think will help us understand that a little bit more, at least to deny it or something like that. But it's very strong imagery in some areas that you could consult there to do that, even if you would reject, you know, the associations or whatever.
Sam?
Well, I would actually say a more immediate source for the building on the elephant is just from any Italian architect coming to Poland or Ukraine, or any Jew who had gone to Rome after the 1600s. They would see Bernini's structure of the obelisk on the elephant at Santa Maria sopra Minerva, and also in the textual tradition going back to Colonna's Hypneratmachia Polyphili, which is from the 1500s. So it was a very common idea in architectural circles outside the Jewish realm from the Renaissance on, and there was a physical model that anyone could see in Rome from the 1600s on. So the idea of a building on an elephant would not be a strange concept at all.
I just wanted to say that I wanted to show that not only this kind of buildings were depicted, but every artist painted buildings that he knew from his
I think it
immediate
makes sense.
environment. So,
Why not? Why not?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just to follow up on this, and also I think the medieval manuscripts, illuminations, particularly of the Book of Maccabees, the Sefer Maccabees, how do these elements? Some of them seem quite similar to some of
but I
those.
don't know if the
It's
18th
not
century
Jewish.
Jews knew this book. In the 18th century Jews, I don't know if they knew this book. So this should be.
Any other questions, remarks? I would add something. Did you pay attention to the connection between the back of the elephant and the structure? Sometimes it's just hovering over it, and sometimes there is a serious leak. Yeah?
In Poland, as I showed, in Poland there's a link between the buildings and the elephant, and these gates link the elephant with the buildings. And in contrast, in Germany there wasn't a link, so maybe when you go far from the visual model, you also change more. Maybe, I don't know.